What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. This here's Legitical Response. And hang on, don't go nowhere. Don't click off the freaking video. There's some very important information in this thing. You gotta stay tuned, folks. Check this out, y'all. Check it out. What it means for the Supreme Court to block enforcement of the EPA's Good Neighbor Pollution Rule, right? Okay, so basically what this is, the Biden administration made this Good Neighbor Rule, right? Like, basically, it's a lot of stuff about the climate religion, and the climate zealots and all these people. It's, stuff that they want done, issues that they have, right? And some of it is very, very good policy, and I think it should be implemented. The only problem with it is, look, get this, folks. This is the mind-blowing part, right? Joe Biden put these rules and regulations, or was trying to, but it got struck down in the Supreme Court, by the way. But he was trying to implement these rules that, specifically with coal-fired power plants, that they had to install technology that's not even fully developed yet, right? He wanted to install these scrubbers on the stacks to capture CO2, right? Because coal-fired power plants output a lot of CO2, and it's damaging the climate. We all know that. We can see it, right? It's hot as hell outside right now in southwest Louisiana. It's very, very hot, and I don't like the heat. Not much at all. So we have a climate problem going on. I'm not going to call it a crisis, because a climate crisis is something that should be happening right now, and it's going to be a disaster if we don't fix it right away. No. Don't let these people lie to you. The climate crisis is going to take a long time to come to fruition. But this rule, getting back to that, because I don't want to get derailed, this rule had to put this technology that's not even fully developed yet, right? But the catch is, if they didn't install this technology and have it up and running by 2030, they would shut these power plants down. That would be outright disastrous for much of the United States. Why? Because there is no plan in place. There is nothing to replace those coal-fired power plants if he were to shut them down, right? Like, if Joe Biden gets reelected, right? Or if Joe Biden would have gotten reelected and the Supreme Court would have said, okay, go ahead with this, there is no plan in place to replace those coal-fired power plants whatsoever. That's insane. What are they going to do for electricity? You might be thinking, oh, well, they could get solar panels. No, I'm sorry. That technology is developed, but you're not going to put solar panels on every single house and every single business to be able to make up for that loss of the coal-fired power plant in that short amount of time, right? Like 6 years to fully develop this technology, which is 2 to 3 years out, right? So that would give them 3 to 4 years to implement and distribute this technology and put it in place. I'm sorry. I just don't see that happening. And this is for pretty much every state, every coal-fired power plant, as far as I know, we covered this story a while back. My longtime viewers may know this, right? We covered these stories. That was just, it blew my mind, and I got to thinking about it, like, hang on, how can he do this? This is just totally insane, right? There was a lot of other rules that went along with this. A lot of it was done pretty good. A lot of emission stuff that we need to do. The problem was the time frame. We cannot make that time frame work. I'm sorry, 3 to 4 years to put this technology on every single one across the United States? And then the thing that got me was, there's no backup plan, right? Like, there's no plan to put solar panels on everything, or build nuclear power plants, or put a bunch of wind farms in. There's no plan whatsoever. So it's like these people would have been forced to go without electricity, is essentially what that rule was saying. Now, do I really think that would have happened? No, I highly doubt it. But that's what the Biden administration is pushing. And it would give them broad authority to actually shut some of these coal-fired power plants down. Without a plan, it's just disastrous for the economy. It's disastrous for people's livelihoods, for goodness sakes. Let's get into the story. The Environmental Protection Agency will not be able to enforce a key rule limiting air pollution in nearly a dozen states while separate legal challenges proceed around the country under a Supreme Court decision Thursday. The EPA's Good Neighbor Rule is intended to restrict smokestack emissions from power plants and other industrial sources that burden downwind areas with smog causing pollution. 3 energy-producing states, Ohio, Indiana, and West Virginia, challenged the rule, along with the steel industry and other groups, calling it costly and ineffective. The Supreme Court put the rule on hold while legal challenges continue the conservative-led court's latest blow to federal regulations. The High Court, with a 6-3 conservative majority. See, you love how the corporate press loves to throw that in there. Like, oh, conservatives are evil, folks. They want to damage the climate. They think it's a myth. No, I'm sorry. Most conservatives don't think it's a myth. We just don't see it as the crisis that you guys see it. You know why? Because you got people like Mark Cuban going around talking about, oh, climate change, flying all over the place in his private jet, buying beachfront property, right? If in 10 years the ice caps are going to freaking melt and your property is going to be underwater, why did you buy that property? And why are you still flying a private jet? They'll make up all the excuses in the world. No, it's outright absurd to watch some of these people. A lot of times they just don't get pushback on it whatsoever. It's like, come on, guys, ask the tough questions here. Ask these people. Why are they pushing this climate agenda, right? Like John Kerry, the climate envoy, was asked this question. Oh, well, I'm a politician. I'm part of the establishment. I have to go here and there and everywhere. No, dude, that is not an excuse. You're trying to sell us some Kool-Aid that we don't want to drink. I'm sorry. A lot of people buy into the climate crisis. But I'm sorry, guys. If you buy into the climate crisis, it's not that much of a crisis. It's a problem. I'll totally agree with you on that. CO2 is warming the planet up. But it's not the crisis that you were led to believe it is. Just look at the data, look at the stats, look at the facts around the situation, and don't let these people's lies persuade you from the truth, from reality. Ground yourself in reality a little bit and see that these people, they're just trying to do this for money. It's all a big grift, if you will, that ultimately will help the planet, right? Like a lot of this climate push is a good idea, right? Like switching to EVs. We need to develop this technology even further. Better batteries, better electric motors, a cleaner way of producing the batteries, because those batteries are very taxing on the climate. And it's up in the air whether there's a really good benefit from switching to electric vehicles right now because of all the emissions and all the damage it does to the environment. Right? But I'm sure as this develops, I'm sure it'll become cleaner and cleaner and cleaner. That's why I say it's good to develop these sustainable, technologies like EVs, like solar panels. For God's sakes, solar panels would be great if we had the battery technology to back it up. But that battery technology can't subsidize a coal-fired power plant. It's just not going to work. That technology it can't take over for it, in other words. I think I used subsidize incorrectly there, but, that the solar panels... I did an interesting little bid in this video a while back where I calculated the rough estimate of how much it costs to put solar panels on your house to where, your energy, you have net energy, in other words. And it was like $10,000 or $12,000 or something like that. So then I calculated how many households were in the United States and how many businesses were in the United States. And so I made a rough, really rudimentary calculation of how much it would cost to put solar panels with the battery backups and all that good stuff on every house and every business in the United States. And it was like $14 trillion, right? That seems like an absurd amount of money, but considering we spend $1.7 trillion more than what we take in every single year, yeah, that doesn't seem like it's all that much. And considering our GDP is like, god dang. The entire country GDP is like freaking 30-something trillion dollars, I believe. Could be wrong on that one, but let's keep going. I've got off on this long tangent. The High Court, the sixth through conservative majority, increasingly reined in the powers of the federal agencies, including the EPA in recent years. The justices have restricted EPA's authority to fight air and water pollution, including a landmark 2022 ruling that limited EPA's authority to regulate carbon dioxide emissions from power plants that contribute to global warming. The court also shot down a vaccine mandate and blocked Democratic President Joe Biden's student loan forgiveness program. But you know what? Joe Biden said, I don't care. I'm doing it anyway. Yeah, he doesn't care about that. He's doing the student loan forgiveness anyway. He just reorganized it and just did it through some other means. It's utter absurdity. What is the Good Neighbor Rule? The EPA adopted the rule as a way to protect downwind states that receive unwanted air pollution from other states. Besides the potential health impacts from out-of-state pollution, many states face their own federal deadlines to ensure clean air. Such states as Wisconsin, New York, and Connecticut said they struggle to meet federal standards and reduce harmful levels of ozone because of pollution from out-of-state power plants, cement kilns, and natural gas pipelines that drift across their borders. Ground-level ozone, which forms when industrial pollutants chemically react in the presence of sunlight, can cause respiratory problems, including asthma and chronic bronchitis. People with compromised immune systems, the elderly, and children playing outdoors are particularly vulnerable. Judith Vale, New York's Deputy Solicitor General, told the court that for some states, as much as 65% of smog pollution comes from outside its borders. States that contribute to ground-level ozone or smog must submit plans ensuring that coal-fired power plants and other industrial sites do not add significantly to air pollution in other states. In cases where a state has not submitted a Good Neighbor Plan or where EPA disapproves a state plan, a federal plan is supposed to ensure downwind states are protected. And that's where, something they don't say is that this would shut down a lot of industry, a lot of coal-fired power plants. They don't say that in this news article. They don't say that whatsoever. But from what it sounds like, from what their story, right? Like, this is all good things. Why would you want to stop this? Yeah, it's because of the ramifications from this, right? Like the shutting down of the coal-fired power plants, shutting down of certain industry. Yeah, that's what Joe Biden's whole shtick is he said it in his campaign, right? He wants to totally eliminate the oil and gas industry, which is outright the backbone of our economy. You can't do that. I'm sorry, you would shut down civilization altogether if you did that. We would be knocked back to the freaking 1800s, for goodness sakes, if we did that, right? Like, say bye-bye to Starbucks. No more McDonald's for you. You want some Whataburger? You want some Checkers or Sonic or Burger King? You don't get it. You want to go to your grocery store and get your groceries? Sorry, you got to go out and kill your food now because you can't deliver the goods, the groceries to the stores. You can't go to Walmart and buy toilet paper because they can't deliver it. That's what that would mean, shutting down the oil and gas industry. Now, I still believe, once again, yeah, we should shift to electric once we develop the technology, once it's outright better than gas-powered engines. Sure, why not? Go right ahead. I have no problem with electric vehicles. As a matter of fact, I would love to get me a Tesla or something like that, one of these cars because they're fast and they're fun. Heavy as hell, but who cares if it goes a freaking 1,000 miles an hour and gets there in 2.3 seconds, right? Like, who gives a damn if it's heavy or not? What's next for the rule? The Supreme Court's decision blocks EPA enforcement of the rule and sends the case back to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit, which is considering a lawsuit challenging the regulation that was brought by 11 mostly Republican-leaning states. Gotta love that. Now, here's the rebuttal. Rich Nolan, president and CEO of the National Mining Association, said he was pleased that the Supreme Court recognized the immediate harm to industry and consumers posed by this reckless rule. No agency is permitted to operate outside of the clear bounds of the law, and today, once again, the Supreme Court reminded the EPA of that fact. With a stay in place, Nolan said the mining industry looks forward to making its case in the court that the EPA rule is unlawful in its excessive overreach and must be struck down to protect American workers, energy independence, the electric grid, and the consumers it serves. Noticed he threw electric grid in there, right? That backs up what I was talking about shutting down the coal-fired power plants. That would be disastrous for many areas, right? People would actually have to go without electricity if Biden went through with this rule and they shut some of these places down. Like I said, do I think he would actually do it? I'm not sure. That's what the rule says, though. That would be the rule. The EPA would come in and try to enforce this. And I'm sure it would have to go to court. And I'm sure the court would strike it down. But that doesn't stop the Biden administration from trying to do this. The attempt is what really matters. Because what if they get some climate zealot nutjob judge who says, yeah, go ahead, shut it down? Like, what are you going to do then? Go without electricity, I guess. The rule and other Biden administration regulations are designed to hurriedly rid the U.S. power sector of fossil fuels by sharply increasing the operating costs for fossil fuel-fired power plant operators, forcing the plant's premature retirement. The brief by Washington Rep. Kathy McMorris Rogers and Senators Shelley Moore Capito of West Virginia and Roger Wicker of Mississippi asserted. Rogers chairs the House Energy and Commerce Committee, while Capito and Wicker are senior members of the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee. So that's what it would do. It would absolutely disrupt the fossil fuel industry, absolutely disrupt these coal-fired power plants, right, with no plans in place. That's the mind-blowing thing, right? Like, if Joe Biden had plans to, install solar panels and give everybody a bunch of batteries, right, or build nuclear power plants instead of these, like build the nuclear power plant, then shut the coal-fired power plant down, I would have no problem whatsoever, right? Like, fine, go right ahead. Sure, that's a good idea. But the United States isn't doing that. And why are we not building more nuclear power plants? They're trying to build more wind farms, right? That's just ridiculous, y'all. Like, it's not always windy. Sure, it can produce electricity and cleanly. But you know what? Geothermal is way better. Geothermal is, for all intents and purposes, inexhaustible, right? Wind can be shut down. The sun, you got clouds, and for God's sakes, you got nighttime, right? What are you going to do at nighttime? The battery backups. But once again, you would need giant freaking batteries to be able to run your house all night long and on cloudy days. So, but there's no plans in place to replace this stuff. They just want to shut down the fossil fuel industry and just be done with it. Like, not thinking about the ramifications of shutting down the fossil fuel industry, right? Just trying to pander to their climate zealots. And that's what I call these people, because they don't care about the ramifications of their climate agenda at all. Whatsoever. They don't seem to think about it, right? Like, these are the same people that get out there and they will glue their hands to the highway, blocking cars, right? Like, that's kind of stupid, outright, just dumb to do that, right? Because it's dangerous, for one, but second, right, you're worried about these cars putting out emissions into the atmosphere, right? Well, when you block these people on the highway, guess what? Those cars are just sitting there idling, putting more emissions into the atmosphere than they would if you would just let them go on their merry way. You're not going to single-handedly shut down all cars on the entire world. Then that's another thing. We have developing nations to worry about. China produces more CO2 than anybody in the world by a lot, by a large factor. That is the dirtiest country on the planet as far as emissions. What are we going to do about that? Right? They're actually building nuclear power plants, right? A lot of them. A lot more than we are. I think we've had one in the past 30 years. And that's it. Yeah, so they're not doing anything. They're just trying to uphold the facade that they're fighting for the climate, so they get those little bit of votes. That's all that's for. It's pandering. Just simple, plain, outright pandering. But I think I've made my point quite clear. Y'all let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comment section. That's all I got for this one, y'all. I want to thank everybody for watching, Y'all try to have a good day and stay legitical. Peace.